Hi, I'm Pam and I'm here to talk about retro video games. Today I'm talking about a shooter that has some imagery that you don't usually see on the NES. It's Abadox. Abadox was developed by Natsume and released for NES in North America in 1990. It's a scrolling shooter where you face off against a number of gross-looking organic enemies as you try to save your planet and a princess. An alien life form called Parasitus has swallowed your home planet of Abadox and now threatens the rest of the galaxy. You need to blast your way into the creature's body, make your way to its core, and destroy it. Abadox will probably remind shoot-'em-up fans a lot of Konami's Life Force, or Salamander as it was known in Japan. The story is similar, as are some backgrounds and enemies. And they both alternate between horizontal and vertical scrolling. However, in Abadox, the vertical stages have you flying downwards rather than up the screen, which is a cool change that also makes sense considering you're traveling down to the center of this huge creature. Your character, Second Lieutenant Nazal, floats through each level, shooting enemies and picking up various power capsules. You can increase your speed, gain barriers that will absorb hits for you, or get missiles that will fire extra projectiles. There are also a few different main weapons to get and power up. There's a tri-beam that shoots in 3 directions, a star beam which shoots in 5, and a Pandora gun that shoots big rings of energy. In the vertical levels, you can also get a very powerful laser gun. The power-ups are set and you can memorize which enemies they drop from as you go. Abadox does not have auto-fire, which is a design decision I'm never really a fan of. My hands get tired. In an attempt to stave off the comments I get anytime I complain about a lack of auto-fire, many NES games had auto-fire at this point. Life Force and Xanac both had it, and they were a couple years before this. Guardian Legend had it. It was not a technical limitation. Through Abadox's 6 stages, you travel from the surface of Parasitus, down its throat, through its nerves, intestines, and stomach. Each stage has both a mid-boss and a final boss. The backgrounds and enemies you face are the most unique part of the game. Full gross-out body horror is definitely not something you see much on the NES. Enemies will include poisonous spores, nerves, and skeletal fish. Not everything makes the most sense. At one point you fight a robot boss, but everything has a similar and kind of spooky feel to it. The bosses are where the most repellent designs are, and I'm not saying repellent in a bad way, they're very well designed. The first one has 2 eyeballs floating around on their stalks that you need to battle. The third stage has you up against a grotesque intestinal creature with an eyeball sticking out of its torso. There are actually a lot of eyeballs in this game, and they're usually a weak spot. The most unique and disturbing boss is the elongated stomach of Parasitus. You travel down a corridor beside the stomach, shooting bits of it as you go and being threatened by spikes. The soundtrack is pretty good, sort of your typical electronic shoot-'em-up music. The starting theme is a bit on the spooky side, and I wish that feeling had continued a bit more throughout the rest of the stage themes. I would have loved to have it really go all in on the horror. Regardless, it's a decent soundtrack, composed by Kiyohiro Sada, who also worked on Contra. The interesting visuals and the novelty of a horror-themed NES shoot-'em-up are what make Abadox worth a look. However, when it comes to gameplay, I do have some complaints. I found the difficulty of this game was wildly inconsistent. You get killed in one hit, which obviously makes it quite a challenge. You do get unlimited continues, but when you start up again with no power-ups, things are almost impossible. The barriers that you can pick up to float around you and absorb hits are not the most reliable. They really need to come directly between you and a projectile in order to save you, and I died a few times despite being surrounded by them. The hit detection is also not the most reliable. I'd sometimes be sure that I was dead because I had hit an object, but I'd pass by without incident, and other times when I thought I was safe, I'd end up dying. The controls are on the stiffer side. This wasn't an issue in the more open corridors, but you often have to go through very tight passages, and I never felt like I had enough control to do it reliably. I probably hit more walls than enemies or projectiles throughout the game. And then there's the bosses. While initially they look quite difficult, with dozens of projectiles being thrown at you, most have a very easy way to exploit them. There are safe places on many of the fights where you can just stand still and spam attacks until they die. Even the final boss has a weak point that lets you take it out before the fight has really even started. It's just a bit disappointing and uneven that after the very difficult corridors in each level, most of the bosses are kinda pushovers once you spot the trick to them. There's also a lot of slowdown at some points when many things are on screen at once. This is normal for NES, but at times it got quite bad and made the game feel laggy and like I couldn't shoot fast enough. The game ends in a novel way, though also in the same way as Life Force. There are no enemies in the final zone, and instead, you need to navigate around obstacles while the game continually speeds up. This was an interesting and very challenging ending. I had fun with Abadox, even if I had a lot of criticisms of it. It's just not as smooth feeling as my favorite shmups, and the tight corridors and one-hit kills could make things very frustrating. However, I think Abadox is worth a play if you like shoot-'em-ups or gross things. If you want to see more shoot-'em-ups, check out my review of Super Spy Hunter, or another of my videos. I have a Patreon if you want to support my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.